The first thing Lacey Whitcomb heard was the typewriter screaming. It was not a human sound. It was the sharp metallic shriek of a carriage forced against a locked escapement, followed by the wet snap of an ink ribbon tearing under pressure. The sound cut through the Kettering House gallery like a gunshot. 200 guests turned toward her. Under the white blaze of exhibition lights, Lacey stood behind a glass-topped presentation table, with one hand frozen above a 1931 Marlowe Regent typewriter. The machine was black enamel and nickel trim, its curved body polished until the chandeliers glowed across it like trapped moons. She had spent 6 weeks restoring it. Every spring had been cleaned by hand. Every type bar had been realigned. Every brittle rubber foot had been replaced with material matched to the original formula. It had worked perfectly that morning. Now the carriage would not move. A thin strand of black ribbon hung from the open cover. Across the gallery, someone began recording her with a phone. Silas Kettering stepped onto the presentation platform, wearing a velvet dinner jacket and the expression of a man arriving at an execution he had personally arranged. "Tell me," he said, his voice carrying easily through the silent room, "that you did not just destroy the centerpiece of a $4 million estate collection." Lacey kept her gaze on the machine. The ribbon had not merely jammed. It had been wound backward through the vibrator assembly and tightened until the fabric twisted beneath the spool cap. "That was not an accident. I didn't destroy anything." Silas moved closer. "We all heard it. The carriage lock was engaged from inside the housing." A small murmur moved through the guests. Lacey lifted her eyes. Silas was smiling, but only with his mouth. "Are you accusing my staff of tampering with the machine?" "I'm telling you what happened. You were the only outside contractor with unrestricted access. You gave access to 3 photographers, 2 auction specialists, and your private appraiser. Professionals," he said. The word landed exactly as he intended. "Not like you." Heat climbed Lacey's throat. She had spent most of her career standing in rooms where men with expensive watches treated her like part of the cleaning staff until they needed her to resurrect something no one else could understand. She knew how to survive condescension. She knew how to let it pass through her without giving it a home. But Silas was not merely trying to embarrass her. He was building a case. "The restoration is documented," she said. "Every stage was photographed. The machine was fully operational when it left my shop." Silas turned toward the audience. Ms. Whitcomb assured Kettering House that this artifact was suitable for a live demonstration. She also insisted on installing the ribbon herself, because it required a non-standard spool. And now the ribbon is ruined. No, it was deliberately over-tightened. The smile disappeared from his face. He reached across the table and seized her wrist. It happened quickly enough that the guests gasped only after his fingers had already closed. Silas dragged her hand toward the exposed gears. "Then show us," he said softly. His thumb pressed into the vulnerable space beneath her palm. Pain shot into her forearm. Lacey tried to pull free. His grip tightened. The edge of the metal ribbon cover sliced across her knuckle. Blood appeared in a bright line. "I said let go." Silas leaned close enough for her to smell champagne on his breath. "You will apologize to this room. Then you will sign a statement accepting responsibility for the damage. Otherwise, by morning, every serious collector in this city will know exactly what kind of restorer you are." Lacey's heartbeat hammered against his hand. People were still filming. No one moved. Then a man near the back of the gallery placed his untouched whiskey on a waiter's tray. The glass made almost no sound. Silas released Lacey instantly. She did not know why until the crowd began separating. The man walking toward the platform wore a black tuxedo, with no visible ornament beyond a steel watch. He was tall enough that the guests seemed to diminish around him, broad through the shoulders. His dark hair cut neatly away from a face that might have been handsome if there had been anything warm in it. There was nothing warm in it. His calm was not peaceful. It was the stillness of a locked room. Lacey recognized him because everyone in Brooklyn recognized Harrison Rourke, even if they pretended they did not. Newspapers called him a logistics magnate. Federal prosecutors used more careful language. Men who worked the docks used none at all. Harrison stopped on the other side of the table. His eyes went first to Lacey's bleeding hand, then to Silas. "Apologize." He did not raise his voice. Silas's face had gone pale beneath the gallery lights. "This is an internal matter." "No," Harrison said. "An internal matter is something that happens behind a closed door. You put your hand on her in front of 200 witnesses." Silas glanced toward the cameras. "Ms. Whitcomb damaged property belonging to my gallery." Harrison looked at the typewriter. "No, she damaged your plan." The room became so quiet, Lacey could hear the strained hum of the lighting system. Silas stepped back. "I don't know what you think is happening. I think you expected the ribbon to disappear before the demonstration." Harrison reached beneath the raised machine cover. Lacey caught his wrist. The movement was instinctive. Several men around the room shifted beneath their jackets. Harrison's eyes lowered to her hand on him. Lacey released him, but she did not retreat. "The tension spring could snap," she said. "Unless you want the carriage lever embedded in your palm, don't touch it." For the first time, something changed in his expression. Not amusement, interest. He withdrew his hand. "Can you remove the ribbon safely?" "Yes, do it." Silas took another step forward. "That ribbon belongs to Kettering House." Lacey opened the leather tool roll beside the machine. "No," she said. "The ribbon belongs to whoever commissioned the restoration." Harrison's attention remained on her face. "I did." She paused. The client had used an intermediary. Payment had come from an estate management company in Delaware. No name had appeared on the restoration order beyond the initials HR. She looked from Harrison to the typewriter. "You hired me?" "I selected you." The distinction made her uneasy. Lacey slid a narrow screwdriver beneath the spool cap. The ribbon resisted. She loosened the retaining screw, lifted the left spool, and saw something that made her breathing stop. Beneath the black fabric was a second layer, not ribbon, paper. A strip no wider than her little finger had been wound around the spindle, almost invisible beneath the ink-soaked cloth. Tiny rectangular holes perforated its surface. Harrison saw her expression. "What is it?" "I don't know yet." Silas lunged across the table. Harrison caught him by the throat. It was done with one hand and almost no effort. The back of Silas's body struck the glass display wall. The guests scattered. Harrison held him there, his face unchanged. "You should have apologized." A light shattered near the gallery entrance. Lacey heard the crack a fraction of a second later. Harrison released Silas and turned. His arm locked around Lacey's waist, dragging her down behind the presentation table as a second bullet tore through the Marlowe Regent's display plaque. And guests screamed. The chandeliers went dark. Emergency lights flooded the gallery in red. Harrison covered Lacey with his body while his men moved through the chaos with terrifying coordination. She felt the solid weight of him above her, one palm braced against the floor beside her cheek. His face was inches from hers. "Are you hit?" "No." "Look at me." I said no. "Your hand is bleeding." "Because your friend assaulted me." "Silas Kettering is not my friend." Another shot punched through the table. Harrison lowered his head over hers. The movement was protective and possessive in a way that made anger and fear twist together inside her. His voice dropped. "Put the ribbon in your coat. You don't own it. Neither do the men trying to kill you." A third bullet struck the typewriter. The bell rang once, bright, cheerful, absurd. Lacey reached above the table, seized the loosened spool, and shoved it into the pocket of her green wool coat. Harrison's hand closed around hers. "Stay beside me." "I'm not going anywhere with you." He looked toward the armed men entering through the service corridor. "That decision is about 30 seconds too late." He pulled her to her feet. They moved through smoke, broken glass, and red emergency light. Harrison kept himself between Lacey and every open doorway. His hand remained at the center of her back without pushing, but she felt the command in it. Outside, rain struck the cobblestones hard enough to bounce. 3 black SUVs waited at the curb. Harrison opened the rear door of the middle vehicle. Lacey stopped. "I have a shop." "Not anymore." Her stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" He looked past her. Across the street, orange light blossomed behind the windows of Whitcomb Type and Repair. For one impossible second, Lacey did not understand what she was seeing. Then the front window exploded outward. Flames rolled into the rain. Her workshop burned beneath the elevated tracks, the old gold lettering on the glass collapsing into fire. Lacey ran toward it. Harrison caught her around the waist. "My tools! Lacey, my father's machines are in there. You cannot go inside." She struck his arm, struggling against him. "Let me go." The roof above her workshop sagged. A blast of sparks erupted through the upper windows. Harrison turned her into his chest and held her as the building gave way. The sound was enormous. Lacey felt it in her bones. She stopped fighting. Rain soaked through her coat. Smoke darkened the sky above the street where she had worked for 11 years. Harrison's arms remained around her. He said nothing. That was somehow worse. She pushed away from him. "You knew." His face was rain-slicked and unreadable. "I knew someone might come for the machine. You brought it to my shop anyway. I believed the gallery would be the point of contact. You used me. I used the restoration. You selected me." The words came out broken. He looked at the burning building. Yes. For one suspended second, Lacey hated him more than she feared him. Then a man stepped from the alley behind Harrison and raised a suppressed pistol. Lacey saw the movement reflected in the SUV window. "Harrison!" He turned as she shoved him sideways. The gun fired. Harrison's men answered. The shooter fell behind a parked car. Harrison grabbed Lacey's shoulders. His control fractured for the first time. "Did he hit you?" "No." His hands moved over her coat, checking her arms, her sides, her throat. She slapped them away. "I'm not one of your shipments." His eyes met hers. "No," he said. The single word carried something she could not name. He opened the vehicle door again. This time, Lacey got inside. Not because she trusted him, because her shop was burning. Someone had just tried to kill her, and the ribbon in her pocket felt suddenly heavier than everything she had lost. Harrison's safe house was not a penthouse. It was an old letterpress factory in Red Hook, hidden behind a loading yard surrounded by brick walls and rusted iron fencing. The first floor still contained printing presses large enough to crush a man. The upper rooms had been converted into living quarters without removing the building's industrial bones. Steel windows looked toward the harbor. Rain streaked the glass. Lacey stood in the center of a long room while Harrison's physician bandaged her hand. The cut across her knuckle was shallow. The bruises around her wrist were not. Harrison remained near the window. He had taken off his tuxedo jacket. His white shirt stretched across his shoulders, the sleeves folded once at his forearms. A thin line of blood marked his collar, though Lacey did not know whether it belonged to him. The physician packed his bag. "She should rest." "She can hear you," Lacey said. The older man gave her an apologetic nod before leaving. Harrison waited until the door closed. "Who knew the machine was in your shop?" "My assistant. The shipping company. Your intermediary. Half the gallery staff." "Who knew about the ribbon?" "No one, including me." He looked at her coat, now hanging over the back of a chair. "Take it out." Lacey remained seated. "You ordered the restoration because you expected something to be hidden inside the machine." "Yes." "What?" "I didn't know." "Not good enough." Harrison crossed the room. He stopped several feet away, close enough to dominate the space without touching her. The Marlowe Regent belonged to Arthur Bell, a municipal contract clerk who spent 30 years recording transactions no government office officially made. Judges, port authorities, union officials, private security firms, mafia families, among others. And you thought he hid records in a typewriter. I knew Kettering had been searching for the machine since Bell died. So, you arranged a public demonstration. I arranged visibility. You set a trap. Yes. The honesty landed harder than denial would have. Lacey rose. I lost everything tonight because you wanted to see who would move. Harrison's jaw tightened. I did not order the fire. But you brought the match. He watched her walk to the chair. The ribbon spool came out of her pocket, wrapped in a linen handkerchief. Black ink had stained the fabric. Lacey carried it to an old composing table beneath 3 hanging lamps. I need tweezers, a magnifying lens, isopropyl alcohol, cotton paper, and an adjustable light source. Harrison took out his phone. No. He lowered it. I wasn't asking you to summon someone. I need access to my supplier. Your phone is being cloned. Then give me a clean one. Anyone you contact becomes vulnerable. My assistant Molly will think I'm dead. She has already been moved. Lacey turned sharply. You kidnapped my assistant? I relocated her and her husband to a hotel under guard. You do understand that ordinary people call that kidnapping. They volunteered after seeing your shop explode. She looked at him for a long moment. Did you tell them I was safe? I told them you were alive. That wasn't my question. Something cold moved through his gaze. I do not yet know whether you are safe. Lacey hated the fear that rose inside her, because she knew he meant it. Harrison ordered the equipment. Within 20 minutes, a case arrived. Lacey sat beneath the lamps and began unwinding the ribbon. Harrison stood across the table. You're hovering. I'm watching. You're making the air nervous. The air will survive. She nearly looked up at that, surprised by the dry edge in his voice. Instead, she used tweezers to separate the narrow paper strip from the ribbon. The perforations were arranged in clusters. This isn't conventional punch tape, she said. The spacing is inconsistent. Can you read it? Not by itself. She examined the inked fabric. A used typewriter ribbon held ghosts. Every letter struck against it displaced pigment, leaving behind a negative impression. With the right light and enough patience, sections of previously typed text could sometimes be reconstructed. This ribbon was different. The impressions overlapped in dense vertical columns. Someone had repeatedly typed over the same line. Lacey adjusted the lamp until the light skimmed the fabric sideways. Faint shapes emerged. Numbers, punctuation, fragments of names. Arthur Bell used the machine's mechanical irregularities as part of the code, she said. Harrison leaned closer. What irregularities? The E strikes slightly high. The lowercase r leans left. The number 6 lands harder than the other keys. Every old machine has a fingerprint. So the letters matter. The mistakes matter. He looked at her hands as she worked. Can the ribbon be copied? Not accurately. A photograph would flatten the impressions. I need the original tension patterns. How long? Hours, maybe days. You have one night. Lacey raised her eyes. Then learned to be disappointed. Men twice her size had probably disappeared for speaking to Harrison Rourke that way. He did not move. You are either very brave, he said, or you have not understood the situation. I understand that you're accustomed to fear making people efficient, and you're not afraid. She looked at the bruises darkening her wrist. I'm afraid of several things. Am I one of them? Yes. His expression did not change, but the room seemed to contract. Lacey returned to the ribbon. You're simply not the only one. For the next 3 hours, she worked while rain battered the steel windows. Harrison took calls in low, controlled sentences. A car had been found abandoned near the gallery. The gunman had used unregistered weapons. Silas Kettering had vanished before police arrived. At 2 a.m, Lacey found the first complete phrase, Lot 17 confirmed. Below it, another line appeared. Payment clears after silence. She wrote the words on cotton paper. Harrison came to stand beside her. The scent of rain and smoke still clung to him. Auction language, she said. No. She looked at him. Then what? Contract language. His voice had become colder. Lacey moved to the next section. A name appeared beneath the impressions. Martin Fell. Harrison went completely still. You know him. He was a state investigator. Was? He drowned 2 years ago. The next line contained a date. It matched the week of Fell's death. Lacey's mouth went dry. Someone used art lots to order killings. Harrison looked toward the dark windows. Someone still does. She searched the remaining ribbon. There were dozens of lot numbers, initials, payment dates. Under one overlapping sequence, she found a newer impression, darker than the others. Restorer retained until transcription. Her hand stopped. Beneath it was one more line. Disposal authorized upon completion. The words blurred. Harrison read them over her shoulder. Lacey stood so quickly the chair scraped backward. You knew I might be targeted. I knew the machine was valuable. That is not an answer. I did not know your name would be entered. You sent it to Kettering House. You announced a live demonstration. You made sure everyone knew I had handled the machine. I needed Kettering to expose himself, and you decided my life was an acceptable expense. No, his answer came too fast. Lacey laughed once, without humor. You don't get to rewrite tonight because you don't like the result. Harrison's gaze remained on her. I chose you because you were the only restorer who could rebuild that machine without replacing its original escapement. That sounds like a compliment, until I remember my shop is ashes. I will replace the shop. No. Your tools. Your inventory. The building. No. His voice lowered. Pride is not useful right now. This isn't pride. It's ownership. I am offering restitution. You're trying to purchase forgiveness before you've admitted what you did. Something moved in his jaw. Lacey stepped closer, despite the warning in his face. You looked at my work. You studied my reputation. You selected me because I was skilled enough to open your secret, and ordinary enough to be expendable. You were never expendable. You did not know me. I know you now. The words silenced them both. Harrison's eyes lowered briefly to her mouth before returning to her face. The moment was so quiet that Lacey heard the old buildings settling around them. He lifted one hand. For a second, she thought he would touch the bruise on her wrist. His fingers stopped an inch from her skin. Then he lowered them. Finish the ribbon, he said. The control in his voice had returned, but something beneath it had not. I will find who issued the order, and then they will never issue another. Lacey believed him. That frightened her almost as much as the bounty. At dawn, she found a reference that did not match the auction codes. Archive 44C BPS Depot, Mechanical Accession Sequence. She spread the paper across the composing table. BPS could mean Brooklyn Postal Service. There is no agency by that name. There was a Brooklyn Postal Sorting Depot before the borough consolidation records were moved. Part of it became a private archive for office machines and municipal equipment. You know this place? I've donated there. They have accession cards dating back to the 20s. Why reference an archive? Because the ribbon isn't the full message. It's an index. Harrison studied the perforated paper strip. The holes identify the cards, and the cards identify whatever Bell was cataloging. Harrison took out his phone. Lacey caught his sleeve. We can't send men in there. He looked at her hand on him. Why? If Kettering knows the archive matters, he'll have people watching every obvious entrance. A group of armed men will announce exactly where we're going. You are not going. She released him. Then enjoy staring at meaningless holes. I can bring the archive here. There are hundreds of thousands of cards. I will bring the building. Despite everything, Lacey almost smiled. You truly believe money is a universal tool. It is more reliable than most people, not with old machines. For a moment, neither moved. Then Harrison said, You stay beside me. That is not agreement. It is the condition. I don't work under threats. His gaze hardened. This is not a negotiation. Lacey stepped closer. She could feel the dangerous quiet building in him, but she was too tired to retreat. Then go without me. He stared down at her. Outside, the rain softened against the windows. Finally, Harrison exhaled through his nose. No locked doors, Lacey said. No taking my phone. No touching me unless I'm in immediate danger. My assistant gets a message in my words, not yours. And if we find evidence, I decide whether it is preserved. You believe you can set terms with me. I believe you need me. The silence stretched. You are becoming difficult to protect, he said. I was difficult before you arrived. His eyes darkened with something almost like approval. Send your message. By noon, Silas Kettering had made Lacey famous. A video from the gallery appeared on every local news feed. The footage began moments after he grabbed her, edited so that his hand was hidden behind the typewriter. Viewers saw only a plus-size woman standing over a ruined artifact, while one of New York's most respected gallery owners accused her of professional misconduct. Kettering House released a statement claiming Lacey had sabotaged the Marlowe Regent after learning another conservator would receive public credit for the restoration. The story grew teeth. Former clients called her dishonest. Strangers reviewed her burned shop online. A morning host described her as an unstable craftsperson with possible financial motives. Lacey watched the segment in silence. Harrison took the tablet from her hand and turned it off. That does not help. I need to know what people are saying. No. You are feeding yourself to them. She looked toward the windows. My reputation was the only thing I had that didn't depend on anyone else. You still have your skill. Collectors don't hire skill. They hire trust. Harrison placed the tablet on the table. Kettering wants you discredited before you speak. I know. He also wants you isolated. I know that too. Then stop helping him. Lacey looked up. You don't get to order me not to feel humiliated. For once, Harrison had no immediate answer. His phone rang. He listened for less than 30 seconds before ending the call. What happened? Lacey asked. Kettering is holding a press conference at 5. To announce he has heroically survived my typewriter attack? To accuse you of stealing the ribbon? Good. Harrison's expression sharpened. Explain. He wants the ribbon in public conversation because he doesn't know whether we decoded it. He's trying to flush us out. He succeeded. Lacey saw the decision settle in his face. No, yes, you cannot attend. He ruined me in public. I can ruin him more effectively in private. That's the difference between us. Harrison came around the table. Lacey, I don't need him frightened in a basement. I need people to see what he did. You are asking to stand in a room where every weapon will be pointed at you. I stood in one last night. His eyes turned glacial. That will not happen again. You cannot promise that. I can promise what happens to the next man who tries. The words were quiet, intimate, terrible. Lacey's breath caught. Harrison looked away first. At 5 o'clock, black SUVs surrounded Kettering House Gallery. Television crews filled the sidewalk. Reporters stood beneath umbrellas while police held the entrance. Lacey stepped from the center vehicle wearing a dark blue dress borrowed from Harrison's housekeeper and her own green coat, smoke-stained at the hem. Harrison emerged behind her. The crowd changed instantly. Questions became shouts. Cameras swung toward him. His hand hovered near Lacey's back, but did not touch. He had remembered her condition. Inside, Silas stood beneath a wall of gilded frames, speaking about integrity and cultural stewardship. He stopped when Lacey entered. For 1 second, his polished expression broke. Then he saw Harrison. Fear replaced surprise. Silas recovered quickly. This event is restricted. Harrison continued walking. Then restrict me. No one attempted it. Lacey approached the bank of microphones. Silas looked at her bandaged hand. You have already caused enough damage. She faced the cameras. My name is Lacey Whitcomb. I restored the Marlowe Regent typewriter displayed here last night. The machine did not fail because of negligence. Someone deliberately reversed the ribbon and engaged the carriage lock. Silas smiled sadly, as though addressing a troubled employee. Ms. Whitcomb is understandably distressed after the fire at her business. Harrison placed a small black device on the podium. Silas's recorded voice filled the gallery. You will apologize to this room. Then you will sign a statement accepting responsibility. The audio was followed by Lacey saying, I said let go. Then the unmistakable sound of metal cutting skin. Silas stared at the recorder. Harrison looked at the cameras. Kettering House deleted its internal security footage 12 minutes after the shooting. Mine was stored elsewhere. A reporter called out, Mr. Rourke, why were you recording the demonstration? Because I do not trust Silas Kettering. Did you own the typewriter? I commissioned the restoration. Was the artifact being used to store criminal records? Harrison's gaze moved toward the reporter. The man lowered his microphone. Lacey stepped forward. The ribbon was removed for conservation after it was tampered with. Any claim that I stole it is false. Silas's face tightened. You have no idea what you are holding. The room went silent. It was the first honest thing he had said. Lacey met his eyes. Then why are people dying for it? Silas looked at Harrison. Something cold passed between them. Then the gallery lights went out. A fire alarm began to scream. Harrison reached Lacey before the emergency lights activated. His arm circled her waist, pulling her against him as his men formed a barrier around the podium. A shot struck the marble column behind them. Harrison turned his body, shielding her, down. Lacey dropped with him. Reporters scattered. The gallery filled with smoke from a canister rolling across the floor. Through the gray haze, a man rushed the podium. He was not aiming at Harrison. He was reaching for Lacey. Harrison caught him by the front of his coat and drove him into the floor. The impact cracked the microphone stand. Another attacker emerged near the side exit. Lacey saw the weapon. "Harrison!" He turned, but not quickly enough. Lacey grabbed the heavy recorder from the podium and threw it. The device struck the attacker's wrist. The shot went wide. Harrison's men closed in. Seconds later, the room was secure. Harrison remained crouched beside Lacey, one hand gripping her upper arm. "You threw a recorder at a gun. It was available. You could have been killed. So could you." His face was inches from hers. Anger burned in his eyes, but beneath it was something more destabilizing. Fear. Not fear for himself, for her. His grip loosened. "You were supposed to stay behind me. I don't remember agreeing to become furniture." He stared at her, breathing hard. Around them, cameras continued recording. Lacey became aware of his hand on her arm, his body positioned between her and the entire room. Harrison became aware of it too. He stood and helped her up. Then, in front of every camera, he removed his black overcoat and settled it around her shoulders. The garment was warm from his body. Silas watched from across the smoke-filled gallery. Harrison looked directly at him. "Ms. Whitcomb is under my protection." The words moved through the room like a verdict. Lacey turned toward him. "I did not ask for that." "No," Harrison said quietly. "You made it necessary." By nightfall, the footage had been seen millions of times. Some viewers called Harrison a criminal trying to silence a witness. Others called Lacey his mistress. Collectors who had ignored her work for years debated her body, her clothes, her expression, and the exact way Harrison had placed his coat around her. The truth disappeared beneath spectacle, but Silas's narrative had cracked. That was enough. The Brooklyn Postal Sorting Depot stood near the waterfront behind a row of warehouses that had survived 3 different redevelopment plans. The public exhibition rooms occupied the front. The mechanical archive stretched behind them through 5 floors of narrow corridors, climate-controlled vaults, and compact shelving installed over the bones of the original sorting facility. At 11 that night, Harrison and Lacey entered through the restoration loading dock. A retired archivist named Owen Mercer met them inside. Owen was in his late 30s, lean, rumpled, and visibly unimpressed by Harrison's reputation. He smiled when he saw Lacey. "I heard about your shop. I'm trying not to. I saved the 1948 Remington parts catalog you donated." Harrison's gaze moved between them. "You know each other." Owen looked at him. "People in small professions tend to." "Typewriter restoration is not small," Lacey said. "No," Owen agreed. "Only criminally underfunded." The corner of her mouth lifted. Harrison noticed. His expression did not change, but the air around him did. Owen led them toward a service elevator. "Archive 44C is in the municipal equipment section. The accession cards aren't digitized. You'll have to search manually." "How long?" Harrison asked. "Depends whether you know what you're looking for. We have a sequence. Then Lacey and I can probably locate it." Harrison stepped into the elevator beside her. "I will locate it with you." Owen raised an eyebrow. Lacey faced the closing doors. "Harrison likes to supervise air. I've noticed." The elevator descended. Harrison stood close enough that the sleeve of his coat brushed hers whenever the old car shook. He looked straight ahead. "Is he always this talkative?" Owen asked. "No," Lacey said. "Tonight he's performing." Harrison's voice was low. "You appear unusually comfortable. With an archivist? With him?" Lacey turned her head. "Are you jealous?" "No." Owen coughed into his fist. Lacey looked at the floor indicator to hide the smile she did not want Harrison to see. The elevator opened onto a corridor lit by green-shaded industrial lamps. Dust floated in the air despite the filtration system. Rows of compact shelving extended into the darkness, each mounted on steel tracks and moved by large circular handles. Owen unlocked Section 44C. Accession numbers beginning with BPS are in the rear catalog room. They moved between shelves filled with adding machines, dictation equipment, stenotype devices, and wooden crates of municipal office supplies. Lacey felt something in her chest loosen. The archive smelled of paper, oil, dust, and time. It smelled like the part of her life that had existed before Harrison Rourke. She ran her fingers over the curved case of a 1926 Royal. Harrison watched. "You miss your shop." She lowered her hand. "Every hour. It will be rebuilt. Not by you." His gaze hardened. "You would prefer it remain burned." "I would prefer one thing in my life not to become part of your empire." The words struck deeper than she intended. Harrison looked away. Owen pretended not to hear. They reached the catalog room. Steel drawers covered the walls from floor to ceiling. Lacey placed the perforated strip beneath a reading lamp. The whole clusters correspond to row, cabinet, drawer, and card. Owen examined the first sequence. Row 9, cabinet 14, drawer 6. They divided the work. Harrison stayed within sight of Lacey even when his men spread through the outer corridors. Every time Owen leaned over her shoulder, Harrison's attention shifted. After the third time, Lacey looked up. "You are going to frighten him." "Owen does not appear frightened. I catalog obsolete machines for a living," Owen said. "My survival instincts are questionable." Harrison said nothing. Lacey found the first card. It listed the Marlowe Regent by serial number. Beneath the ordinary acquisition notes was a handwritten code, Asterion Reserve. Harrison took the card from her. The blood drained from his face so subtly that only someone watching closely would have noticed. Lacey was watching closely. "What is Asterion?" "Nothing. You are not a convincing liar." Owen stepped back. Harrison read the remaining numbers. His eyes went cold. "A clearing structure. For what?" "Offshore transfers." "Whose?" His silence answered. Lacey stared at him. "Yours." "A portion." "How large a portion?" "Enough." Owen looked toward the corridor. "I'll find the next card." When he was gone, Lacey lowered her voice. "Silas's murder exchange is funded through your accounts. I did not authorize it, but you knew Asterion existed. It holds reserve capital, political insurance, and settlement funds between organizations that do not trust one another. Mafia families." "Yes." "How many deaths bought your peace?" Harrison's gaze sharpened. "Be careful." "No. You be honest." She stepped toward him. "You knew the money came from violence." "I knew exactly where my money came from." The lack of denial chilled her. "What I did not know," he continued, "was that Kettering had embedded private contracts inside the settlement system." "And the bounty on me?" "If Asterion accepted it, the order is backed by my collateral." Lacey felt sick. "The people hunting me are being paid with your money." "Yes." The word was barely audible. She looked at the man who had shielded her body twice, who had placed his coat around her in front of the city, who had burned her life by choosing her as bait. "You knew this archive might expose you." "I suspected. And you still brought me. You insisted on coming. After you made leaving impossible." Harrison stepped closer. "I am trying to keep you alive, by controlling every door, every phone, every person I see, because someone has placed a price on your body. With your money." His composure tightened around him like armor. "I will correct it." "How?" "I will find Kettering. And kill him, if necessary. That won't erase the system. It will erase the man who used it. Another man will replace him." Harrison's eyes darkened. "You believe you understand my world because you read a few lines on a ribbon. I understand machines." "This is not a machine." "Yes, it is." Lacey held up the accession card. "Money goes in. Names come out. Everyone tells themselves they only touched one gear, so no one is responsible for what the machine does." For the first time, Harrison looked wounded, not visibly enough for anyone else to see. But Lacey saw it. "You think that is what I am?" I think you built something you can no longer control. He moved until only inches separated them. I controlled everything until you opened that ribbon. The words were quiet, but they carried a different meaning. Lacey's pulse changed. Harrison lifted his hand toward her face. His fingers stopped beside her cheek. He did not touch her. You are the only variable I did not calculate. She should have stepped back. Instead, she whispered, "That is not the same as caring." No. His gaze dropped to her mouth. It is becoming worse. A metallic crash sounded from the corridor. The lamps went out. Steel motors roared beneath the floor. The compact shelves began moving. Owen shouted from somewhere in the darkness, "Harrison!" He seized Lacey's hand and pulled her between two rows as the shelving closed behind them. The aisle narrowed. Metal groaned. A bullet struck the shelf above Lacey's head, showering them with flakes of rust. Harrison pushed her down and drew a weapon from beneath his coat. He fired twice toward the end of the aisle. A man screamed. The shelves kept closing. "There's an emergency stop," Lacey said. "Where?" "Outside the row." "Stay here." "There is no here." The steel walls were less than 3 feet apart. Harrison turned sideways, bracing one arm against each shelf. The muscles in his shoulders strained. The machinery did not stop. Another shot rang out. Harrison jerked. Blood appeared across his white shirt near his ribs. Lacey's breath caught. "You're hit. Grazed." "That is not a graze. Find a way out." The aisle narrowed another inch. Lacey scanned the shelves, adding machines, boxes of ribbon tins. A disassembled Underwood mounted on a wooden tray. She grabbed the Underwood's long steel carriage rail. "What are you doing?" "Making the machine regret meeting me." She dropped to the floor and forced the rail into the track beneath the moving shelf. The first attempt slipped. The metal edge tore her bandage. The shelves compressed. Harrison made a low sound as the steel crushed against his wounded side. Lacey repositioned the rail. "Move your foot." He obeyed. She angled the bar beneath the drive wheel and kicked it with both feet. The rail caught. The mechanism shrieked. Sparks burst beneath the shelf. The motor jammed. The walls stopped inches from Harrison's chest. For 1 second, neither of them moved. Then he looked down at her. "You saved us." "You sound surprised." "I am reconsidering several assumptions." Gunfire erupted beyond the aisle. Harrison's men answered. Lacey crawled toward the narrow opening. Harrison caught her ankle. "No. Owen is out there. My men will find him." "You don't know where the control panel is." "Lacey." She looked back. His face was pale from blood loss, his body still wedged between the shelves. He was not ordering her because he doubted her. He was afraid to let her leave his sight. The realization landed with dangerous force. "I'm coming back," she said. His grip tightened. That sentence has never been reliable. "It is from me." Their eyes held. Slowly, Harrison released her. Lacey squeezed through the gap. Emergency lights flashed at the end of the corridor. She found Owen unconscious near the catalog room, breathing but bleeding from the temple. Beside him lay an attacker dressed in archive coveralls. A red control box stood on the wall. Lacey struck the emergency release. The compact shelves shuddered and rolled apart. Harrison emerged with one hand pressed to his side. He crossed the distance to her, despite the blood soaking his shirt. Before Lacey could speak, his arms closed around her. He held her hard enough to lift her toes from the floor. The embrace was not gentle. It was desperate. His face pressed briefly into her hair. Then he seemed to remember himself. He set her down and stepped back. Lacey stared at him. Harrison looked toward Owen. "Is he alive?" "Yes." His control had returned, but not completely. Lacey touched the blood at his side. He went still beneath her hand. "You need a doctor. After we find the cards, you can barely stand." "I am standing, out of spite. It has been useful." She looked up at him. Even wounded, he seemed dangerous enough to command the dark. But his eyes were fixed on her, as though nothing else in the archive existed. Lacey's fingers remained against his shirt. "You thought I wasn't coming back. I knew you would. That is not what your face said." His jaw tightened. What did my face say? That you were afraid. Harrison leaned closer. I am not afraid of dying. I know. The silence between them deepened. His hand rose slowly. This time, his fingers touched her cheek. Barely. The contact was so restrained it felt more intimate than a kiss. I am afraid, he said, of surviving you. Footsteps approached. Harrison's hand dropped. One of his men appeared at the end of the corridor. We have Mercer. 2 attackers alive. More vehicles outside. Lacey stepped away. Then, we finish now. The remaining accession cards formed a set of instructions. Arthur Bell had discovered that Asterion Reserve operated through a rotating list of authentication phrases. Each phrase had to be typed on the original Marlowe Regent because its mechanical irregularities generated a measurable strike pattern. The typewriter was not merely hiding the evidence. It was the key. The final card contained a location. Atlantic Cable House, Pier 28. Harrison read it twice. What is there? Lacey asked. A private communications exchange. Yours? It was. Past tense. Lacey studied his face. You sold it to Silas. I gave him access years ago. He handled transfers involving art assets, and he built the murder exchange inside your financial network. Yes, the truth settled between them. Silas had not stolen Harrison's system. Harrison had given him the door. By the time they returned to the loading dock, police lights flashed outside. Harrison's men diverted them through a maintenance tunnel leading beneath the depot. At the exit, he stopped walking. Blood ran between his fingers. Lacey caught him as his knees weakened. His weight forced her against the brick wall. For the first time since she had met him, Harrison Rourke looked mortal. His forehead rested against hers. Do not call an ambulance, he said. I'm beginning to think you enjoy giving me impossible instructions. Ambulances report gunshot wounds. Then stop getting shot. His mouth almost curved. The expression vanished before it became a smile. Lacey wrapped his arm over her shoulders. Together, they moved through the tunnel. Harrison's doctor removed the bullet in a room above the letterpress factory. It had entered shallowly beneath the ribs and missed his organs. He refused sedation until Lacey threatened to leave. Only then did he allow the physician to put him under. Lacey remained beside the bed. She told herself she was waiting because they still needed his knowledge of Asterion. She told herself it had nothing to do with the way he had held her in the archive, nothing to do with the fear in his eyes when she disappeared between the shelves. Near dawn, Harrison woke. His hand moved instantly toward the weapon on the bedside table. Lacey caught his wrist. It's me. He focused on her. The tension left his body slowly. You stayed. I said I was coming back. That was in the archive. I assumed the promise had reasonable coverage. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he noticed the chair beside the bed. You slept there. I didn't sleep. His gaze moved over her tired face. You should have. You were unconscious. I have survived unconsciousness before, apparently without learning humility. His thumb shifted beneath her hand. Lacey realized she was still holding his wrist. She released him. Harrison turned his face toward the rain-streaked window. I knew Kettering was hiding something inside the Bell estate, he said. I did not know he had built contracts into Asterion. But you knew the demonstration could be dangerous. Yes. Why not send your own people to retrieve the machine? Because Kettering would have destroyed it. I needed him to believe the restoration was legitimate. And I made it believable. Yes. Lacey stood. So you did choose me as bait. Harrison looked back at her. Yes. The word reopened everything. At least now you admit it. I have never denied it. You avoided saying it plainly. Because plain truth does not become less ugly when spoken. No. It becomes something I can judge. He sat up, despite the pain. What is your judgment? Lacey looked at the bandage around his ribs. You are not innocent because you protected me from the consequences of your own decision. I know. You do not get to call obsession love. I have not called it anything. You watch every door I enter. You move people without permission. You threaten anyone who looks at me too long. Owen Mercer is alive. He was never in danger from me. That assessment remains under review. Despite herself, Lacey almost laughed. She hated that he saw it. His expression softened by a degree. Then Lacey remembered her shop burning. You cannot control me into forgiving you. I know. Do you? Yes. Harrison swung his feet to the floor. Pain tightened his face, but he stood. Lacey folded her arms. What are you doing? Giving you a choice. He crossed to the dresser and placed a clean phone, a wallet, and a set of keys on top. Your assistant is at the Harbor Hotel. The blue key opens a car downstairs. The phone is secure. You can leave. Lacey stared at him. And the bounty? Remains active. So this is another test. No. If I walk out, your men follow me. One vehicle, at a distance. That is not freedom. It is the most I can give while keeping you alive. She looked at the keys. Harrison stood motionless, waiting. Everything in him resisted what he was doing. She could see it. He was a man built around possession, allowing the one person he wanted to control to leave. Lacey picked up the keys. Something bleak entered his eyes. She moved toward the door. He did not stop her. Her hand touched the knob. Behind her, Harrison said, "The first time I saw your work, I understood why Bell's machine had to go to you." Lacey did not turn. "I read an interview you gave to a trade journal. You said restoration was not making an object new. It was preserving every mark that proved it had survived." Her throat tightened. "I remember. I thought that made you useful." She looked back. Harrison stood beside the bed, pale and wounded, with nothing between them but the truth. "I did not expect it to make you impossible to forget." Lacey opened the door. She left before he could see how deeply the words had landed. The Harbor Hotel was surrounded by Harrison's men. Lacey found Molly and her husband safe in a private suite. Molly cried when she saw her, then became furious enough to throw a pillow at Harrison's guard. For 1 hour, Lacey allowed herself to imagine leaving New York. She could disappear under another name. Repair machines in a quiet town where no one knew Silas Kettering or Harrison Rourke. Then Molly handed her a salvaged tin box recovered from the alley behind the shop. Inside were 3 blackened photographs, her father's brass screwdriver, and a folded invoice. The invoice was for the Marlowe Regent. At the bottom, beneath the restoration order, someone had typed an additional line. Whitcomb confirmed. Rourke will respond. The message had been added before the machine ever reached her shop. Silas had known Harrison selected her. He had allowed it because he wanted Harrison emotionally compromised. Lacey had never been only bait for Silas. She had been bait for Harrison too. A shadow moved beneath the hotel room door. Lacey saw it a second before the lock clicked. She pushed Molly toward the bedroom. The door opened. A man in hotel security clothing stepped inside. Lacey threw the tin box at his face. He raised one arm. She drove her father's brass screwdriver into the back of his hand. The attacker shouted and struck her across the mouth. Lacey fell against the desk. A second man entered. Gunfire exploded in the corridor. The first attacker seized Lacey by the hair and dragged her upright. Then Harrison appeared in the doorway. He wore a black coat over his bandaged body. There was no visible anger on his face. That was more frightening than rage. "Take your hand off her." The attacker pressed a gun beneath Lacey's chin. Harrison stopped. Blood spread slowly through the shirt beneath his coat. "You should be in bed," Lacey whispered. His eyes never left the gun. "I found it unproductive." The second attacker moved behind Harrison. Lacey saw him raise his weapon. She drove her heel down on the first man's foot and twisted away. Harrison fired. The second attacker fell. The first man swung his gun toward Lacey. Harrison crossed the room before he could pull the trigger. He struck the man once. The attacker collapsed. Harrison caught Lacey against his chest. His hands framed her face. A bruise was already darkening along her cheek. Something inside him broke. Lacey saw it happen. He turned toward the unconscious attacker. She grabbed his coat. "No." Harrison looked down at her. "He touched you. And he is no longer touching me. He put a weapon against your throat." "I know. I will not allow him to breathe after that." Lacey held his gaze. "If you do this while I'm asking you not to, then everything you said about giving me a choice was a lie." The room became still. Harrison's breathing slowed. He looked toward his men. Take them alive. The order cost him. Lacey knew it. He lowered his forehead to hers. I let you leave for 3 hours. I noticed. 3 hours, he repeated, and someone put a gun to your throat. You were counting. I counted every minute. His voice was no longer cold. It was exhausted, possessive, honest. Lacey touched the edge of the bloodstain beneath his coat. You tore your stitches. I will survive. That is becoming a very irritating habit. His hand closed gently around the back of her neck. For one suspended moment, their mouths were inches apart. He waited. A man who took cities without permission waited for her. Lacey felt the difference. She could have closed the distance. Instead, she whispered, Take me to Atlantic Cable House. Harrison's eyes darkened. That was not what I wanted you to say. It is what you need to hear. The old cable exchange stood on a condemned pier beneath the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway. Atlantic Cable House had once carried financial messages beneath the ocean. Its upper floor contained rows of obsolete telex machines and brass switchboards. Below, modern servers had been installed behind steel walls. Silas had turned history into a weapon. Lacey and Harrison entered through the waterside tunnel shortly before midnight. His men secured the outer building. The restored Marlowe Regent had been recovered from the gallery and transported in a reinforced case. One bullet had damaged the rear panel, but the typing mechanism remained intact. Lacey set it on a steel desk in the center of the communications room. Harrison placed the ribbon beside her. Screens surrounded them, each displaying account numbers and encrypted transfer routes. Asterion Reserve, the financial heart of Harrison's empire. How do we cancel the bounty? Lacey asked. Harrison studied the authentication instructions. We cannot cancel a single contract. Why? The system was designed so no one family could withdraw an active order after placing it. It prevents political pressure, meaning it prevents mercy. Yes. What can we do? Collapse the reserve. Lacey looked at the screens. All of it? All Asterion accounts would have to be liquidated simultaneously. The settlement guarantees would disappear. Every contract backed by the pool would become uncollectible. And your money? Gone. How much? Harrison did not answer. She read the figures on the central screen. The number contained more zeros than she could process. This is your throne. It is part of it. Without these accounts, the other families will turn on you. Yes. Your political protection disappears. Yes. Your organization could fracture. Yes. He spoke without hesitation, but Lacey saw the tension in his hands. This was not merely wealth. It was the structure that made men fear him. It was the insurance that kept his enemies cautious and his allies loyal. There must be another way. There is. Harrison looked at her. You die before the transcription is completed. The room seemed to lose all sound. That closes the contract? Your death satisfies it. Lacey stared at him. And the accounts remain. Yes. She looked toward the typewriter. The carriage waited at the left margin. Harrison moved beside her. You will enter the phrases, and you will authorize the liquidation. Yes. You are deciding very quickly. I decided at the hotel. Before you knew whether this would work? I knew what I was willing to lose. Lacey's throat tightened. You built your life around this empire. No. His gaze held hers. I built my life around never being powerless again. The distinction revealed more than he intended. What happened? Harrison looked toward the black river beyond the windows. My father trusted a man who sold our travel route to a rival organization. My mother died in the first car. My younger brother died beside me in the second. Lacey said nothing. I was 23, he continued. I spent the next 14 years making sure no one could ever buy enough power to corner me again. And now the same system is cornering you. Yes. Because of me. No. Harrison stepped closer. Because I built a machine that eventually demanded something I would not surrender. His fingers touched the bruise on her cheek with unbearable gentleness. You. A speaker clicked above them. Silas Kettering's voice entered the room. How moving. Steel shutters slammed over the exits. Harrison pushed Lacey behind him. Silas appeared on the upper walkway with 6 armed men. His velvet dinner jackets were gone. He wore a dark suit and carried a pistol. "You always were sentimental beneath all that discipline," Silas said. Harrison's voice was flat. "You mistook restraint for weakness." "No, I merely needed to discover its price." Silas looked at Lacey. "And there she is." Harrison moved enough to block his view. Silas smiled. "The restorer who made the great Harrison Rourke visible. You arranged the fire. I arranged pressure. Fire is such an imprecise instrument. You placed the contract on her. I offered the market an opportunity, using my reserve. Using the structure you gave me." Silas descended the iron stairs. His men spread through the room. "You wanted plausible distance from the unpleasant parts of power," he said. "I provided it. Judges disappeared. Investigators drowned. Rivals encountered accidents. Your ports remained quiet, and you never asked why." Harrison's expression did not change. Lacey felt the truth strike him anyway. Silas stopped beside the Marlowe Regent. Arthur Bell became inconvenient when he began preserving the transactions. "I spent years searching for this machine." He touched the typewriter's nickel trim. Lacey slapped his hand away. Silas looked at her with amused surprise. "Still protective of broken things? It isn't broken. No. That is your tragedy." He seized her injured wrist. Harrison moved. 6 weapons rose. Silas tightened his grip. "Careful. One emotional decision and she becomes an invoice." Harrison stopped. His calm returned in a terrifying wave. "Release her. You could have ruled this city for another 20 years. Instead, you placed your coat around a repairwoman in front of every camera in New York." Lacey saw the insult coming before he spoke it. Silas looked over her body slowly. "This is what wakes a king?" Harrison's eyes turned black. Silas smiled. "There he is." Lacey pulled against his hand. "You built your entire operation around hiding behind paintings and dead men's machines. You don't get to talk about courage." Silas struck her. The blow turned her face. Harrison fired. The bullet hit the weapon in Silas's hand, throwing it across the floor. Chaos erupted. Harrison crossed the room, dragging Lacey behind the steel desk as gunfire shattered the screens. His men breached the western shutter. Silas's guards fired from the walkway. Lacey crawled toward the Marlowe Regent. Harrison caught the back of her dress. "What are you doing?" "The accounts. Stay down. If the reserve remains active, more men will come." A bullet tore through the desk. Harrison covered her with his body. His wound reopened, blood spreading hot against her shoulder. "You cannot keep stopping bullets forever," she said. "I can stop enough." "That is not a plan." "It is the one I have." Lacey looked at the typewriter. The authentication phrases had to be entered in sequence. Only the machine's original strike pattern would validate the commands. She reached for it. Harrison caught her hand. "If you rise, they will see you. Then make them look at you." His gaze locked with hers. The request was ruthless. It was also the only way. Harrison leaned close. "If this fails, you run through the western breach. I'm not leaving you. That is not negotiable. You lost the right to use that word." A shot struck the steel near his head. Harrison looked toward the walkway. Then he removed his signet ring and pressed it into Lacey's palm. "Every account requires my biometric authorization. When the final phrase appears, place this against the brass contact. What will you do? Wake up the rest of the room." He rose into the gunfire. Harrison moved with cold precision, firing toward the walkway while advancing through broken glass. Every weapon turned toward him. Lacey lifted the Marlowe Regent onto the desk. The ribbon trembled between her fingers as she threaded it through the vibrator. She rolled a sheet of paper into the platen. The first phrase appeared on the surviving screen. "Mercy is not a debt," Lacey typed. The keys struck hard beneath her fingers. MERCY. The damaged E landed high. The R leaned left. The machine recognized its own imperfections. Account Group 1, released. Gunfire thundered through the room. Harrison reached the stairs. A guard rushed him from the side. Harrison struck the man with the empty pistol and kept moving. The second phrase appeared. "Every throne has a price." Lacey typed faster. A bullet shattered the lamp above her. Darkness swallowed the desk. She continued by touch. Her fingers knew the keyboard. She had spent half her life listening to machines speak through resistance, tension, and rhythm. The Marlowe Regent's carriage advanced beneath her hands. Account Group 2 released. Silas appeared beside the desk. He grabbed Lacey by the hair and pulled her backward. The typewriter crashed onto its side. "No!" She drove her elbow into his ribs. Silas struck her across the face and reached for the ribbon. Lacey seized the carriage return lever and ripped it free from the damaged machine. She swung. The metal lever struck his forearm. Silas shouted. Lacey dropped to the floor, recovered the typewriter, and set it upright. The final phrase appeared. "Only ashes cannot be bought." Silas raised his pistol. Harrison was still on the stairs, too far away. "Lacey," she typed. "Only." Silas fired. Harrison threw himself from the lower stair. He hit Lacey as the bullet crossed the desk. They fell together. The shot tore through Harrison's shoulder. He made no sound. Lacey crawled toward the typewriter. Silas aimed again. Harrison, lying in his own blood, caught Silas's ankle. Silas kicked him away. Lacey reached the keyboard. ASHES. Her fingers slipped on blood. CANNOT. Silas stepped behind her. B. His gun pressed against the back of her head. "Finish that word," he whispered, "and he loses everything." Lacey looked at Harrison. He lay several feet away, one hand pressed to his shoulder. His empire waited on the final 3 letters. DOUGHT. His money, his leverage, his protection, his throne. Harrison met her eyes. Type. Silas pushed the weapon harder against her skull. "He will be dead within a month without those accounts." Harrison's voice remained steady. "Type, Lacey. You will lose everything," she said. "No." His eyes held hers. "Not everything." Lacey pressed the keys. UGH. Silas pulled the trigger. The gun clicked. Empty. Harrison had counted the shots. He rose despite the blood and crossed the room. Silas turned. Harrison struck him once, driving him against the steel desk. The pistol fell. Lacey typed the final letter. T. The bell rang. Every screen in Atlantic Cable House turned white. Harrison pressed his signet ring to the brass authentication plate. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then account numbers began disappearing. Zurich, Cayman, Luxembourg, Panama, Singapore. Billions dissolved into frozen restitution trusts and inaccessible public seizure accounts. The reserve balance fell in great red numbers. At the far end of the room, a cabinet containing bearer certificates unlocked automatically. Harrison crossed to it. He removed a metal case, opened it, and looked at the stacks of paper that had purchased fear across 3 continents. Silas struggled to his knees. "You cannot do this." Harrison lifted a burning emergency flare from the floor. He dropped it into the case. Fire consumed the certificates. Silas stared as his hidden marketplace collapsed around him. "You'll have nothing." Harrison watched the flames rise. Then he looked at Lacey. "I have enough." Silas lunged for the fallen gun. Lacey saw him move. Harrison. Harrison turned and fired once. Silas fell beside the burning accounts. The flames reflected across the dark windows, turning the river beyond them gold. Sirens approached from the city. Harrison swayed. Lacey reached him before he fell. She caught his face between her hands. His skin was cold. "Stay with me." He looked at her through half-lowered eyes. "Did it work?" "The reserve is gone. The bounty? Gone." A faint breath left him. "Good." His knees gave way. Lacey lowered him to the floor among the falling ash. His head rested in her lap. She pressed both hands against the wound in his shoulder. "You are not allowed to die after making me type all that." His eyes closed. "Harrison." No response. She leaned closer. "I am still angry with you." His mouth moved slightly. "I assumed. You still owe me a shop. I offered. I did not accept." His eyes opened. Even then, he managed to look offended. Lacey laughed through tears. "You are impossible." His bloodied hand lifted toward her cheek. This time, he did not stop before touching her. "I know. The police found them beneath the white glow of empty account screens, while black ribbons spilled across the floor, and billions of dollars burned into ash beside them. Harrison survived. The bullet had passed through his shoulder without striking an artery. The injury at his ribs became infected, keeping him under private medical care for nearly 2 weeks. During that time, Asterian Reserve collapsed. 3 political officials resigned. 2 port commissioners disappeared before federal agents could question them. Silas Kettering's private archives were released anonymously to journalists, prosecutors, and the families of victims whose deaths had been disguised as accidents. Kettering House Gallery closed within 48 hours. Harrison's organization fractured exactly as he predicted. Some of his captains left. Others challenged him. A few tried to seize what remained. Harrison answered with the same controlled brutality that had built his reputation, but without the offshore fortune behind him. Every confrontation became personal. He refused to let Lacey near any of it. For once, she agreed. Not because she feared his world, because she understood that loving someone did not mean standing in every room where they had chosen to bleed. 3 months later, Whitcomb Type and Repair reopened in a different Brooklyn storefront. Lacey paid for it with insurance money, private commissions, and donations from collectors who had discovered their courage only after the truth became public. She refused every dollar from Harrison. He attempted to purchase the building through 4 separate companies. She identified each one and returned the contracts unsigned. On the 5th attempt, he came in person. The bell above the shop door rang at 7 in the evening. Lacey looked up from a pale blue Olivetti on her workbench. Harrison stood beneath the new gold lettering on the window. He wore a charcoal suit and no tie. The sling was gone, though stiffness remained in his left shoulder. 2 men waited outside. He had respected her rule about bodyguards entering the shop, mostly. "You are late," she said. "I was not aware I had an appointment. You have been walking past the window every night for a week. I was assessing security. You were brooding. I do not brood. You do it professionally." Harrison closed the door. The shop smelled of machine oil, coffee, and polished wood. Restored typewriters lined the shelves. Her father's brass screwdriver rested in a velvet-lined drawer beneath the workbench. Harrison's gaze moved through the room. "You rebuilt it. I told you I would." "You did not need me." Lacey heard the question hidden inside the statement. "No." He looked at her. She set down her tweezers. "But I missed you." The words stopped him more effectively than any weapon could have. Harrison crossed the shop slowly. He did not touch her. "You have not returned my calls." "I needed time. I gave you 87 days. You counted. I count everything involving you. That is not entirely romantic. It was not intended to be." Lacey studied his face. He was still Harrison Rourke, still feared, still capable of frightening powerful men with a quiet sentence. Losing his accounts had not transformed him into someone gentle. It had stripped away the illusion that power could protect him from loss. That was different. "What remains of your organization?" she asked. "Enough to keep my enemies respectful. And the illegal parts. Being dismantled." "Because of federal pressure?" "Because you were right." Lacey raised an eyebrow. He looked faintly irritated by the admission. "I built a machine," he said, "then pretended I was not responsible for every function. And now? Now I know exactly what operates under my name." She rested one hand on the workbench. "That sounds exhausting." "It is. What do you want from me?" The question changed the room. Harrison stepped closer. You cannot own me. I know. You cannot move me to a safe house whenever you feel afraid. I know. You cannot threaten archivists because they make me smile." His jaw tightened. "That rule remains under consideration. Harrison, I will make an effort." It was probably the most honest promise he could offer. Lacey looked down at the blue Olivetti. "The ribbon needs replacing." He followed her gaze. "I assume that is not a metaphor. Sit." Harrison Rourke, who had commanded docks, judges, and men with guns, sat at her workbench. Lacey placed a fresh ribbon cartridge in his hands. "Open the cover." He did. "Release the spool catches." His large fingers handled the delicate mechanism with unexpected care. When he reached for the ribbon, it twisted. "You're pulling too hard," Lacey said. "I am barely touching it." Machines remember force. He looked up at her. People too. Yes. The word remained between them. Harrison loosened his grip. Lacey moved behind him and guided his hands through the ribbon path. Her body brushed his shoulder. He went completely still. "You can breathe," she said. "I am breathing," not convincingly. His fingers closed around hers. Slowly, he turned on the stool. Lacey stood between his knees. His hand rested around hers, not trapping it, simply holding. "I do not know how to do this gently," he said. "Replace a ribbon? Any of it." The honesty in his voice stripped away her defenses. Lacey touched the scar near his shoulder. "Then learn. What happens when I fail? I tell you. And if I fail badly, I leave." Pain moved through his eyes. She did not soften the truth. Harrison nodded once. "Then I will learn quickly." His hand rose to her face. He paused before touching her, waiting as he had in Atlantic Cable House. This time, Lacey closed the distance. She kissed him. For a man capable of extraordinary violence, Harrison kissed her with astonishing restraint. His hand settled at her waist. Not pulling, not claiming, holding. When she moved closer, the restraint broke. He stood, lifting her against the workbench as his mouth deepened over hers. The repaired typewriter keys rattled behind her. His body surrounded her, powerful and warm. But when Lacey placed a hand against his chest, he stopped instantly. Their foreheads rested together. Outside, rain began tapping against the shop window. "I love you," Harrison said. The confession sounded almost angry, as though the truth had fought him on the way out. Lacey smiled. "You look offended by it. I had other plans." "So did I." His thumb moved along her cheek. "You burned them. You burned several $billion. "That was easier," she laughed softly. Harrison's expression changed as he watched her. The darkness remained in him. It always would, but it no longer filled every room he entered. Lacey touched his face. "I love you too." His eyes closed for one brief second. When they opened, the fear was gone. Not because he believed he could never lose her, because he finally understood that keeping her required more courage than controlling her. 6 months later, Lacey held her first public exhibition inside the restored Brooklyn Postal Depot. The event celebrated American writing machines and the overlooked craftspeople who kept them alive. Owen Mercer curated the municipal collection. Molly managed the guests. A line stretched around the building. The Marlowe Regent occupied the final display. Its damaged enamel had not been replaced. The bullet mark remained in the rear panel. A short section of the original black ribbon rested beneath glass beside it. Lacey had preserved every scar. At the bottom of the display, a small card read, "Restoration does not erase survival. It makes survival visible." Harrison stood at the back of the room. No cameras surrounded him. No politicians approached. He watched Lacey speak to a group of young restorers beneath the warm gallery lights. When the crowd finally thinned, she found him beside the Marlowe Regent. "You stayed out of sight," she said. "This was yours. You hate staying out of sight. I hate sharing your attention. That is not the same thing. It is close." Lacey slipped her hand into his. Outside, rain covered Brooklyn in silver. Black cars waited at the curb, but Harrison did not look toward them. He looked at her. On the desk beside the Marlowe Regent was a clean sheet of paper. Lacey rolled it into the machine. She typed one sentence. "Some empires are worth burning." Harrison read it. Then he leaned over the keyboard and added another line with careful, deliberate keystrokes. "Only if you know what to build from the ashes." The bell rang at the end of the sentence. Lacey smiled. Harrison lifted her hand to his mouth, his gaze holding hers, while the old machine waited beneath their joined hands. Beyond the tall windows, Brooklyn kept moving through the rain, restless, dangerous, and full of secrets. But inside the archive, surrounded by machines that carried every mark of the lives they had survived, the mafia boss who had once believed power meant never surrendering anything, finally understood the truth. He had not lost his throne when he burned his empire for Lacey Whitcomb. He had simply chosen where he wanted to kneel.